We also have prepared, for the first time that I'm aware of, a model training program for selected and designated armed school personnel. Now, this is probably the one item that catches everybody's attention. Let me emphasize, this is not talking about all teachers. Teachers should teach. But if there is a personnel that has good experience, that has an interest in it, and is willing to go through this training of, again, 40 to 60 hours that is totally comprehensive, then that is an appropriate resource that a school should be able to utilize.
All right, the man that you just heard as we welcome you back to the Steve Malzberg Show, former Congressman Asa Hutchinson, who's the chair of the NRA's task force to improve school security, and they put out today a 255-page booklet called the National School Shield Initiative. And joining us now is former Congressman Hutchinson. And Congressman, great to have you aboard. Thank you so much.
I'm pleased to be with you, Steve.
Well, thank you. Look, this is something that I feel so strongly about. I have a child in middle school, and I just think that armed security, teachers who have experience with guns or want to have experience with guns and are willing to learn and willing to carry the gun on school grounds, it can be nothing but a very welcomed added layer of protection for school safety.
Well, absolutely. It's common sense. I mean, we've had armed guards in schools ever since President Clinton initiated it. And when the federal funding ran out, our local schools and communities absorbed the cost of that because parents said that's important, particularly in light of some tragic incidents we've had in this country. So it's absolutely common sense. We also, of course, recommended much beyond simply the armed presence. We understand it's also access controls and perimeter security. Much can be done, but the key is to focus our energies on school safety.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk a little bit about what else is in the report, and this was undertaken as a response after the shooting at Newtown. The NRA took proactive action and said that they were going to study and come up with these recommendations and selected you to head it up. Correct?
That's right, and we put together former Secret Service, Homeland Security officials who conducted school assessments, and our task force came up with these recommendations. And one thing specific I wanted to mention, that schools are struggling with assessments and proper policies on school safety. And so we have an online assessment tool that can be used for any school, free for any school, whether it's a private school, a parochial school, or a public school. And they can do their assessments, and then they'll be moved to a best practices. So it gives them a whole bunch of information, tools they've never had before, that can be used by the schools online, a web-based tool.
Now, originally, am I correct that originally the plan or the recommendation of the NRA was to have former police officers and security guards employed in each school, and now going to the voluntary approach where possible? And you do point out that it would be, it would all be local authorities would decide what's best for them. But money, I guess, is a consideration, as it is in anything, and that is one reason for that recommendation to train teachers instead of calling for an armed professional in each school?
That's right. I mean, ideally you have what they call school resource officers, which is an armed officer in the school. That's the best solution, but many schools just can't afford that, and so they're all trying to figure out different ways to protect the children. And so we wanted to get this out of a 40 to 60-hour training program for a select person who's willing to be an armed response in the school.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so it's a very important part of the puzzle. We got to remember the gap is in the smaller schools, the middle-sized schools. The larger schools has huge security resources, and they can deploy those. But it's the smaller schools that are struggling right now. We're
talking to former Congressman Asa Hutchinson here on the Steve Malzberg Show. What do you say to the critics, and many of them are parents of the victims at Newtown who say that this is a bad idea? You know, more guns in schools or a gun in a school is not an answer. It's only going to put our children at risk, and it's going to turn into the wild, wild west. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, two ways. First of all, they said the same thing about airlines when we put federal air marshals on there, but it's obviously given a greater level of security, deterrence. It's a very sensitive environment that works well. We protect our children when they go to shopping malls. They have armed security at shopping malls. Nobody runs away. And a school is not going to be an armed camp. It's going to be a very discreet environment. The other thing about Newtown that you mentioned, I was honored to have Mark Mattioli, one of the parents there who lost a son at Newtown, and he called and he says, I'd like to support something on school safety. And so he actually attended our announcement today and just really remarked from his heart that he's thankful that the country is looking at increased efforts on school safety, and so that's a perspective you don't hear all the time.
No, and Congressman, I would bet you dollars to donuts if I knew what that meant, that you're not going to see that endorsement on any of the coverage of the network news shows tonight or on the cable stations, with maybe one exception here or there, because they don't want to put that forth.
Well, that's right, and so thank you for the opportunity to mention that, because it took a lot of courage for him to be there, and it was common sense, though, and so there's, and even Newtown, there at Sandy Hook Elementary, after that terrible tragedy, it was the parents who said, we want to make sure we have security when we go back to school, when our children go back, and so, armed presence protection for schools is not unusual. It's common sense. We wish we didn't have to do that, but the children are worth protecting.
One more question for you, Congressman. What do schools do now? I mean, if schools want to, have you gotten response from schools? Have schools gotten in touch with you? Do you get in touch with them? How does it proceed from here?
A lot of schools have inquired with us because, they're struggling for solutions. They want more tools. We've got to fine-tune the assessment tool that we're going to put on the web-based solution so that everybody will have access to. They're anxious to receive that. And, of course, the states, as they develop policies, and the states are going to have to change laws to allow the training of school personnel on a
Right. So it's an ongoing process. Not to cut you short, sir. I'm up against a hard break. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope you come back, Congressman.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Take care. Asa Hutchinson, ladies and gentlemen.